Merab Dvalishvili falling off a cliff. I'm joined today by Miguel, one of the brightest minds in MMA analyst history. I mean, he is truly up there as one of the best to ever do it. We talk about UFC 323 with Merab in depth. We talk about Pantoja and Joshua Van in depth, all that. So, guys, let's get into it. In UFC 323, Miguel Class joins us today to talk about Merab and his litany of techniques of excitement and violence, because Merab's probably the most violent fighter in the UFC. You agree with that?
I mean, he doesn't always do the most damage, but he's active and he's exciting and he wears people out for sure. He's violent on people's endurance.
He's the David Goggins of MMA. He's just not going to knock you out. He's just going to cardio you to death.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Or, I mean, he'll submit you if you're Sean O'Malley or whatever, but I think that was his last finish.
Jack's like said that was a tune-up fight, and I was like, ooh.
Yeah, I mean, basically, layup.
It kind of was. Well, I mean, and Sean O'Malley got a tune-up fight too with Cheeto Vera, so
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean he's facing Petr Yan, a rematch. Not a very inspiring one from the first fight, but I got a sneaky suspicion that this one will be a little bit better than the original fight. I think that there's some things about Merab that aren't quite what everybody makes him out to be, and
Right.
also I think Petr Yan can do better, I guess, in least amount of sense. What's your initial read on this fight?
Yeah, I agree that it'll be different, and I think in two parts, because I think that, as you said, I think Merab isn't quite what he was in their first fight. He hasn't done what he did in their first fight to anybody else in any other fight. What I mean by that is if you rewatch that first fight with Petr Yan, Merab is instantly shooting takedowns from within the first 15 seconds, and he shoots almost 50 takedowns in that fight. He hasn't repeated that feat since. And in every fight since, he has taken at least one round off, whether that is, the last round in the first Sean O'Malley fight, or the fourth round against Corey Sandhagen, or kind of the first two rounds against Umar. He kind of chooses a round or so to take off. And I think maybe it's because he's, getting a little bit older and his cardio isn't quite as endless as it may seem, or just because he is also doing a little bit more in terms of striking these days and he's feeling confident. And so but taking a round off for Merab is like still shooting 10 takedowns, it's just like, it's not like it's still a crazy high pace. It's not, that we saw that in the Corey Sandhagen fight, even the round that he arguably lost against Sandhagen, I think the fourth, where he wasn't going as hard for all the mat returns that he was doing earlier. He still shot like 10 takedowns that round. It's still crazy.
Yeah, he's definitely living up to his nickname of the Machine.
Right.
My real big thing here, like, man, I don't take Petr Yan as a guy who like mentally breaks, although we did kind of see that against I'm not Sean O'Malley, against Merab in their
Yeah.
first fight. I I don't know if okay, we know that Merab is slowing down. We know he's 34 years old as a bantamweight, which is basically like 80 as a normal
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
I don't know if Petr Yan's going to be the one to break him though, which it kind of seems counterintuitive because of who Petr Yan is. Like he's
Yeah.
starts slow and builds momentum as he goes. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he's able to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'll ever like, especially if Merab comes out hot again like he did in the first fight. Even if he takes round four off, like, will that be enough to get Petr Yan going? And I don't think it will be. And I think the key to beating a Petr Yan, Merab is like the perfect matchup for it, because it's like, okay, just don't allow him to start making his reads.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much it. And Merab is a particularly hard matchup for Yan because of that, because he can just shoot so many takedowns. And so you really do have to respect his takedown feints a lot, because with other fighters, you don't have to worry about it necessarily all the time, because you get to a point where like, okay, this guy is getting tired and he's not just going to shoot over and over again. But with Merab, and we saw that in their first fight, he really will shoot, half of the takedowns that he feints. And so it really starts to free somebody like Petr Yan up, who really is trying to probe and trying to find reactions for his striking to start to snowball. The other reason the fight will be kind of different is because Petr Yan is also different. I think he's regressed a bit too.
Yeah,
He's
which
getting
hurts.
older and he's not quite as aggressive or as confident as he used to be, even though technically he's got a lot of things going for him. But it's going to be hard for him to find a route to victory against Merab because he's going to have to not just defend takedowns, which he is really good at doing. He is going to have to find a way to punish them and probably to wrestle a bit offensively on his own as well in the way that Umar did. So, but and then he's going to have to find a way to put hands on Merab in the time that he has. And the problem is his game just build. It's a building game, like you mentioned. He needs some time to get his reads, to start really understanding how the opponent is going to react. And until Merab decides to take a round off, or if Merab decides to take a round off, Petr Yan isn't going to get that space that he needs. And even if he doesn't tend to finish you in the round that he gets his reads. So, and he might only have, that one round that Merab is a little bit slow to try and find a finish.
Yeah, and if it's an early round that Marab's kind of like, we'll take it off here, like that's going to do nothing for Petr Yan, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Because he's already kind of a slow starter. I mean, slow
He did good
starter is
against
like,
McGee, though. He
yeah,
did
yeah,
start hot against Marcus McGee, but that's not
exactly.
Merab.
And I should mention, Dan Albert put out an article on Substack recently that's, a magnum opus on Petr Yan's entire career within a week ago or something like that,
Ooh,
or within this week. And so anybody should check that out. And he makes some really interesting reads on Merab, and one of them are on Petr Yan. And one of the things he says is he doesn't necessarily think that Petr Yan is that slow of a starter because he is aggressive, like you mentioned against McGee. It's just that, like we keep saying, that he needs to snowball his offense with reads. So he's doing stuff in the beginning of the fight. It's just those things are sort of like how boxers start fights. They start
right.
fights, they're not just winging whatever punches they practiced on the mitts. They're trying to read their opponents and get data. And so it is there's purpose and intent, and he is also being aggressive typically.
Yeah, and another thing I think I was looking at in a kind of in this kind of a sense was Ian Gary's performance against Bilal Muhammad just last week, man. Like you look at those kicks to the knees and stuff, and like I feel like that's a way to slow Merab Dvalishvili down, like just
Right. Yeah.
kicking the front knee and just making his like miserable to walk. Petr Yan doesn't really have that kind of a game. He has a good low kick,
Yeah.
but he's not gonna teep you. He's not gonna throw teeps to the knees, and he likes to stick to his boxing a lot more. I get the feeling.
Yeah, and I agree. And like the guys on heavy hands are a little bit more harsh on Petr Yan than maybe I would be, but they sort of criticize him for not having a range game at all. Like they'll kind
Yeah,
of say like Petr Yan basically doesn't have a long range game at all. And I don't agree with that entirely. He does have a jab and he does kick. It's just, his kicks are most often round kicks to the body or things like that, and which he uses well. And he can still collapse distance pretty quickly, so he doesn't always need to have a long range game, especially if he's intent on pressuring. He's going to get his range against most people. But still, yeah, he kind of lacks the kind of things you would want to see somebody who you would imagine, sort of like Umar did.
yeah.
When Umar had the space, he had a longer range game with all of his kicks, and he could throw kicks because he was a good enough wrestler that he wasn't terribly afraid, and he had long straight punches to fall back on whenever Merab was trying to close distance. So Umar's approach is not something really Yan is well suited to replicate, and that doesn't bode well for him probably here.
No, but there's always the case of Petr Yan's great hands, even though he's mainly
Yeah,
a decision fighter. He can hurt Merab with some elbows and stuff, kind of like
yeah,
the Uriah Faber, the ghost of Uriah Faber fight. I struggle, dude. I really do, man, to see kind of what Merab can bring to the table. That not Merab, I'm sorry, what Petr Yan can bring to the table
yeah.
here. The only thing that Jack Slack pointed this out with Renner de Ritter talking about cutting weight 4 times in a calendar year and how that kind
Right,
of
yeah.
it's probably what ruined him against Brendan Allen. Now, I don't get the feeling that Merab's cutting that much weight, but that is another factor we have to take in here because he's looked slower and slower each fight in his last 3 fights. Maybe this is the fight that does him in. And I'm not rooting for Merab to be, dethroned or anything. Petr Yan's a good champion, and Merab, I don't find him to be a terrible champion either. He's
Yeah.
entertaining despite the decisions, but I do think there's some fun in how do we dethrone this guy and I mean, it could be his own doing, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
Does he
I,
get
I, I agree
tired because he
100%.
cut weight?
Yeah. I think if Merab is going to lose this, it's going to be because he overextended himself this year, particularly. Like you mentioned, he's 34. That's really old for a bantamweight. And yeah, and also he has been clipped in several fights, like against Cejudo, obviously against Marlon Moraes, in that last round against Sean O'Malley in the first fight, even. And so, and Corey Sandhagen, when he had that round four, and he landed a few really good shots in that round too. And so it's like even if Merab wasn't hurt there. So Merab can't he his ability to recover is insane, and that's in part due to his endurance, but or due mostly to his endurance, not just in
Yeah.
part. But it's he's getting old and nobody's immortal, and despite him being the machine and having the best cardio we've ever seen in the sport, there's a limit to it, and there's just a limit to what somebody can do like this. Like fighting three title fights like this in a calendar year and such a quick turnaround from the Corey Sandhagen fight that went 5 rounds, even if he didn't take a lot of damage, like we know that this guy is kind of a maniac. And so it doesn't sound like he is super thoughtful about recovery and like how he deals with his body, like somebody like GSP was, sounds like he's just kind of pushed through the pain kind of a guy too. So he might just blow himself out.
Yeah, and I give like a little bit of flack to fighters that are like older that don't fight as much because
Yeah.
like wow, it just seems like they fell off a cliff. It's like no, they don't fight that much. But Marab fights so much, it's like okay, we can kind of start to see the decline. It'll be interesting to be able to compare him to the first Petr Yan fight. And I don't
Yeah,
think there's a
exactly.
way he looks better than that first Petr Yan fight.
Same.
I
Yeah.
just don't think he has the opportunity to. So I don't know. Do you do picks, man? Do you have an initial read on this first fight
Yeah,
or
I
this?
mean, it's really hard to find a reason to pick Petr Yan, even if you can understand how the fight is probably going to play out differently. Rematches rarely play out identically to the first fight. And I, like you, can imagine it being more difficult, but still, it's incredibly hard to pick. You kind of have to fool yourself or be wishful thinking to pick Petr Yan in this fight. So I'm picking Merab 100%.
Love it. Now, our co-main event is probably the better fight. Uh,
Yeah.
Alexandre Pantoja and Joshua Van. Probably polar opposites in terms of style, which is what makes this fight so good. And like that's what I was so excited about Jack Della and Islam.
Hmm.
But you know that kind of didn't turn out how I
Yeah,
hoped it
yeah.
would. But I do got a feeling that this one's going to be a slight bit different. What's your initial reads on this? Do you think a little too early for Josh Van, or do you think
Hmm.
Pantoja continues his march of featherweight goatness?
Yeah. I don't think it'll be like Islam versus JDM because Pantoja doesn't ever really have fights like that except for the
Yeah,
Kaya Sakura fight. He
yeah,
almost always has a difficult time, even against people that were rushed, like Steve Erceg. Steve Erceg was rushed way more quickly than Joshua Van, and so and he had an incredibly tough fight that you could even score the fight for Steve Erceg, and some people did. And so Pantoja doesn't really have those fights. He's a dog. He overcomes people with grit and determination and an incredible meta back-taking game and grappling game that is just, it's like Islam Makhachev in the sense that he's, just way above pretty much the entire rest of his division in terms of what he can get done on the ground and how he can maintain positions. Now, my initial read on the fight is that it's going to be a tough fight in the same way that the Steve Erceg fight was tough. I just don't know. It's a much harder fight to understand, like what it is going to mean, like whether or not it's going to be so tough that Pantoja can lose or, even get knocked out, which is something that sounds impossible. But if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Joshua Van. Or if, Joshua Van can just win enough rounds by clearly being the one to cause a lot more damage, and then whether he can survive when he inevitably gets into bad positions on the ground. It's just there's so many unknowns here. Even though like I think it's perfect timing for Joshua Van, he definitely deserves it after that awesome performance against Royval. But it is just a fascinating fight.
it really is. the fact that Joshua Van can kind of change the flow of a fight. Like, remember that last round against Brandon Royval? Like, it was a very
Yeah,
close fight, and Van kind of stole that fight in the last round by hurting Royval the last, what was it, last 30 seconds or something like that, hurting
right. Yeah,
Royval. And he can do that. And like you said, Pantoja gets himself in danger a lot of times, man. And it's curious because it's the classic striker versus grappler matchup.
yeah.
And we've seen Pantoja have hard times with strikers like Brandon Moreno and such. I think it does hinge on Joshua Van's ability to create scrambles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because we've seen the UFC, like, or judging really, kind of change how they look at scoring, because Pantoja's not going to be able to just hold position and win a round. If it's
Yeah,
2 minutes of him getting pieced up, we're going to see, the case of Joshua Van winning a round, even though he was controlled for 3 minutes.
yeah.
He has to cause Pantoja's going to, and he does. Pantoja usually causes damage, but if Van can create these scrambles and do enough damage standing up, he could possibly steal those rounds. And Pantoja's known for dropping later rounds, and that
Yeah.
could really bite him in the rear.
Yeah, the trick with Pantoja is generally he makes the striking competitive enough that he can win those close rounds too, because he's just a marauder on the feet, and you know he's so wild. His striking is entirely predicated on his chin, and that's not entirely fair because he makes adjustments. He hits the body when he needs to. And there's some more craft than it seems like with him, and that's where a lot of people get in trouble, is that he's craftier on the feet than people think, and aggression just goes a long way, especially when you have that threat of being the superior grappler in your back pocket always. We saw that with Islam. It's like it goes such a far way to be the one in the match with the confidence that I can fight in any phase, and you have to keep it standing is how Pantoja is going to feel. And that's how he fights everybody, feeling that way. And so that confidence, he can lean on it. And if his chin holds up, which, who knows, he's also getting old,
Yeah,
and he has one of the best chins in the sport. But Van is an absolutely nuclear hitter. Royval has an amazing chin, as
yeah,
well, and got hurt several times against Van. Um, but I think also Van really does want those pocket exchanges, and Pantoja will oblige him in the sense that he will blitz forward, throw a wild combination, and look to change levels. And it's just how much what is the approach? Because the only time we've really seen Van sort of fight a more disciplined fight where he wasn't just sort of wading forward, begging somebody to brawl with him was against Bruno Silva,
yeah,
where he fought like a really measured fight where he eventually fought a pressure countering performance where he was moving forward, drawing out reactions, and then countering him. And so that was his most disciplined, his like most well thought out performance. And every other time it's been, just brawls, or the Ray Saruya fight where he just shut down his wrestling entirely, which that might be the most relevant thing. I don't know. What do you think about the Ray Saruya fight? You think that bodes well for Van's takedown defense in here in this fight?
no, I don't.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like Racer is good, but it's not. It's different when you're um fighting in mixed martial arts, and Alexandre
exactly.
Pantoja can punch you at the same time and he can choke you
Yeah,
out. Like, Ray's a great wrestler.
100%.
Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong. He's a
but
great
you're
wrestler,
right.
but he kind of took it too early of a fight with a guy like Joshua Van, who's just here to
Yeah,
brawl and have fun. He's kind of like an old school Robbie Lawler, sprawl and brawl type guy. He showed it in
yeah.
that fight. Um, I think this fight is kind of Pantoja's to lose.
Hmm.
If I'm looking back at like the Cara France fight, and he was a lot more aggressive in that fight. That's it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was the fight where he went out and was like, "All right, bro, I've had enough of this. I'm marching you down and just going
Yeah,
to maul
exactly.
you." You know, I,
Mhm.
I I think we might see something like that come from
He-
Pantoja, which could not. It could bode well for Joshua Van, who could, like, all right, check it out. Watch this little Sean O'Malley, Conor McGregor fade cross.
Yeah, yeah,
Or it could be like, holy crap, what do I do here? I am in the fire and it's way too hot for me. This guy
yeah.
Pantoja's been here for years. So what do I do? So, it's kind
Yeah.
of a gamble, but I think it's a good gamble for Pantoja, and I do think he'll kind of come out a lot more fire under his rear than normal.
Yeah, I agree. He generally likes to start fights really aggressively because he wants to run people against the fence and then shoot on them there. That's like his takedowns in open space are not great, not as good as Ray Saruya technically, but like you mentioned, what he makes up for in tech, what he makes up for the lack of technical acumen in his wrestling shots with timing them really well and getting opponents to cover up because he's running forward behind punches and because he will pressure them to the fence and that will do a lot of the work for him because and the other thing about Pantoja with his takedowns is he doesn't really need to just get people down. He needs a shot at the back.
Yeah.
And so he can take people down with double legs against the fence. That's his main weapon, but really, if he just creates a scramble, he can find the back, and that can shut down an entire round. Um, but I guess he will start aggressively. And the thing about Van is he is sort of like Petr Yan in that he's a bit of a slow starter too, in the sense that he likes to find his reads and likes to build momentum. And like he likes to find out and draw out the reactions that he wants to counter. He like they'll probably trade low kicks early if Pantoja doesn't just rush. That will be maybe a spot where he can get something done. But Pantoja's good at that range too with his own, calf kicks and things like that. So it's a tough fight for Van because I'm like you, I'm sort of expecting Pantoja to get out to an early lead, and then it will be whether or not Van um, can really make up for it late and also whether or not he can escape if Pantoja finds routes to his back because we just haven't seen his submission defense in particular tested that much, and we've seen him like even end up on the ground against like Edgar Chairez and things like that. So and of course the Charles Johnson fight we've seen him get knocked out in a wild brawl. So it's tough. But I'm more of a believer, I think, in Joshua Van than I am in Petr Yan and their
Yeah,
respective fights. I
I
don't know
agree.
how you feel about that.
Yeah, no, I kind of wish they would swap the two fights. I wish we got Pantoja and Merab. That's way more interesting. And then Yan and Joshua Van. Yan Van
Oh,
sounds
oh
cool.
man. Yeah,
Yan
I mean
Van, baby.
those fights would be insane for
Yeah,
sure.
that's Pantoja's the one I think beats Merab, man. I do. I think he's smart enough. He's got good enough ground game, and I think that. But that's neither here nor there. That's not a fight that's actually happening yet. But I think that's why they're on the same card. If you want to know the truth.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, if they both win here, there's not a lot else for them.
Mm-mm.
So that would make a lot of sense.
It's the
But
one.
if you want to do picks for this fight, I make this mistake every time with Pantoja, but I'm going to pick against him because there's part of me with Joshua Van, like a lot of us like sort of nerdy analysts, we've been following him since he showed up in the UFC because it's been immediately apparent that he has immense potential. And we just love these boxing guys with like great technique that hit the body. And so I've been following him and he has been getting better. And that fight with Brandon Royval, like it showed the caliber of fighter that he is more than all the technical details, which we knew he was good at. Um, it showed that he can hang, that he's not cowed by a jump up in competition like that. And where with JDM versus Islam, I think what we saw is like JDM was absolutely cowed by Islam.
Yeah,
Islam though, compared to Pantoja, I think Islam is in a special class. Like he's a top 10 all-time great.
yeah.
He is a
Five, top five,
legitimate,
bro.
yeah,
Respect
yeah,
him.
I mean, for
Yeah,
sure. You could
he's
put him
amazing.
in, yeah. He's one of the greatest fighters ever already. And so he's in a different category than Pantoja.
Yeah,
Pantoja is a good champ. Um, a very good champ, but his competition hasn't been the craziest. His division is not the deepest, and a lot of the fights that he's been in have been very close.
yeah.
And that he is gritty for sure, but he is not. I don't think he is going to show up and basically show Joshua Van that like I'm an all-time great and you are just a good fighter for your generation, like Islam can do to people. And
Right.
so I kind of feel like Van actually he may end up being something like that. He has that type of potential to be a really stupendous fighter. And I just kind of see that in him. So I'm sort of like, it's a little bit of wishing it into existence. I believe in Joshua Van. He's really good. He's getting better. And yeah, he can do it. I think he can do it. I don't think it's going to be by cracking Pantoja's chin
Mm-mm.
and knocking him out, but I think it will be by just being the one to land the much, much cleaner strikes like almost every round.
Kind of like the Pantoja fight. I mean, not the Pantoja, the Royval fight.
Yeah, yeah. Like every round it's close, but you will look at it and say Van landed the far harder shots in that round.
Right. All right, so let's quick fire these last or the rest of these fights on here because we've gotten through two of
I
them.
yeah.
Real quick thoughts on Moreno and Tatsuro Taira. Kind of an interesting fight, kind of not because I don't know if Taira's going to be able to compete with Brandon Moreno and what he brings to the table. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean it's a bit of a crossroads fight, and Moreno hasn't looked his most impressive lately, but still it just is one of those fights where you feel like, well, Brandon Moreno is better in more phases, and he's a very good grappler. We've only really seen Pantoja be able to clearly win and extended grappling exchanges with him. And
Yeah.
while Tiara's a really great grappler, he's, doesn't seem to be that caliber as Pantoja yet. So basically same way. It's like hard to not pick Moreno here. He's just got more going for him.
Wouldn't be sad, honestly. I like Tatsuro Taira a lot. I think he's a fun fighter, but I
Yeah.
don't I like Moreno's faces when he fights too, and he likes
Yeah.
Legos, so that's sick. I mean, I
Right.
mean,
That's it. Yeah.
come on, bro. I got the Millennium Falcon right here.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
gotta rock with it. All right. Henry Cejudo and Peyton Talbot. If I would have told you this fight was happening 10 years or 5 years ago, you'd have been like, what?
Oh
Who?
man. Yeah.
It's
This
a
is a
weird one.
weird one. This is
Yeah.
a super weird one. I don't know what to think of it, mostly because I'm not super confident in Peyton Talbot's, because what we saw in his last fight with Felipe Lima is that it looked like he got a lot better from since the Barcelos fight at defending
Yeah.
takedowns, but also Lima fought a terrible fight and was kind of beating Peyton Talbot on the feet a lot, but then was panic shooting because Talbot was pressuring him. And so it was a super weird fight, and Felipe Lima is obviously not the caliber of wrestler that Cejudo is, but at the same time, I just don't think Cejudo is he's old and he doesn't really put it on people with his wrestling that much. And so I think he'll probably give too much time and space to somebody like Peyton Talbot, because I think Cejudo probably just thinks he's a bit better of a striker than he is.
Yeah.
But I would not be surprised to see him just out wrestle
Just come out with the
Peyton
singlet.
Talbot.
Just come out with
Yeah.
the singlet, man. That's
Oh
all.
man. Yeah. It would be cool if he could wear the gold shorts that he used to wear back in the day, if you
Yeah,
remember
this is last
that.
fight
Yeah.
too. This would be crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so does Bogdan Guskov get past the weirdness of Jan Blachowicz, or does Blachowicz just like check kicks shin to shin and win a fight?
Yeah. I don't know, but
It's a dumb fight.
it is a very weird fight. Guskov is just somebody that is on a streak right now because he's fighting a bunch of, the light heavyweights that are not good, which is, 99% of the division who cannot fight in the pocket at all. And technically, I think Jan Blachowicz is a very difficult matchup for him because he is not easy to get into that range and he's quite capable fighting off the back foot, and he's got a really good jab, and he's a great kicker and kick defender, like you mentioned. But he's also just old at this point, and it definitely seems like a fight where the old guy might just get booped early.
All right, rapid fire now. Quick picks. Dawson or Torres?
Uh, Dawson, I just haven't.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what? I haven't been super impressed with Manuel Torres. Let's just say that.
No, I like Grant Dawson a lot. He's coming to his own recently.
Yeah,
McKinney or Chris Duncan?
I'm gonna go with Duncan. It's McKinney's a one-round fighter. Duncan has impressed me a lot. He's
Yeah,
a
he's good.
super well-rounded fighter.
All right, Barber Carini Silva?
I guess Macy Barber? I don't know. I don't have a ton of interest in this fight.
We're carrying less and less as we go, and we're getting
Yeah.
to the best one yet. Ferris ZM and Sadikov.
Oh, this fight is awesome.
That's a
This
good
fight is
fight.
so cool. My only real pick for this fight is it's going to be sick. I guess I'd probably pick Sidikov, but it's going to be an awesome fight.
Won't be bad either way. Now, the best fight on the entire card: Marvin Vettori or Bruno Ferreira.
This is a pretty funny fight, actually. I think Vittori's just past it at this point. Ferreira is not good, but Vittori's so far past it.
Edson Barboza, Jalen Turner.
Oh man! Oh, another super weird fight. Like, what is this fight gonna look like just with them standing next to each other? But Jalen Turner, I guess. But why is he back? Why is he not retired? I don't know.
Barboza is 55 too, so okay.
Yeah.
Ivo Aslan and Iwo, I'm not saying that Polish last name.
Oh, I mean, I think they both suck a lot. So I don't know. I guess I'll go with Aslan because he has a little bit more experience in the UFC.
My biggest L of the year was like, oh, these Turkic guys are going to be good. Watch Ivo Aslan do something great. No, he sucks. Let's see. Abdul Malik and Tricoli.
Abdul Malik, just athleticism.
All right, and Muhammad Naimov or Marion Santos?
Naimov, I think. Just he's grappling mostly. That's why he's a better grappler.
Yeah. I mean, I get that vibe too. So I appreciate you coming on, dude. We had to kind of go quick at that end there. I'm running out of Zoom minutes, but you know how it is down here. What you working on lately, dude? Where can everybody find all your stuff?
Yeah, I'm on Patreon, so patreon.com/Miguel Class, and I do long form breakdowns where I break down the entire fight in sort of an edited and scripted way with the clips. And so I'll do that for the top 2 fights here. And then I do sort of a guest series podcast. We did one together on the career of Dustin Poirier. So I'll be talking to a couple guys soon about some other topics. So you can subscribe to my Patreon and find the stuff that I do there.
You are the man. All the links will be in the bio. Miguel, I appreciate you coming on, dude, and can't wait to talk again.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Miguel, for coming on the show. Miguel is so fun to talk to all the time. A fellow Louisianian, too, so that's always super cool. Yeah, guys, I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to this fight this weekend. It's going to be a blast. Who do you think is going to win? Merab? Do you think he finally, gets dethroned by somebody? And was that somebody Petr Yan? Sound off in the comments. Let me know. Fight Finders, working on it. Episode 9. It's rolling. Storyboard's almost done, so I'm so excited. Boom, 1 through 8 right here. Subscribe right here. You guys know what to do. Do it, do it, do it!